welcome to my channel, Joyce's Affordable Glam Life 360, or just Joyce. I'm on here today with a Unsolved Mystery Thursday, and this mystery is about the Great Plymouth Mail Truck Robbery. So, if you would like to know how I achieved this look as well as the Plymouth Mail Truck Robbery, then keep on watching. The Great Plymouth Mail Truck Robbery, at the time of its occurrence, was the largest cash heist of all time. On August 14th, 1962, two gunmen stopped a U.S. mail truck that was delivering $1.5 million in small bills from Cape Cod to the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston, Massachusetts. The robbery occurred on Route 3 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The two robbers, dressed as police officers and parading some submachine guns, tied up the driver of the truck and the guard and drove the truck themselves to unknown places where the money was dropped off in those places. The truck and the tied-up driver and guard were abandoned in Randolph, Massachusetts. That was alongside Route 128. For 5 years, the United States Postal Inspection Service, as well as the FBI, combed New England for leads in the robbery, but there was a lack of evidence. Authorities at one time offered a $150,000 or 10% of the amount recovered from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. The cash reward, in addition to the $50,000 Postmaster General rewarded for information leading to the conviction of those responsible for the caper. They even went so far as to deem any suspect killed in his apprehension to be deemed convicted for the purposes of the reward. The combination of media, law enforcement, and popular interest in this breaking robbery combined for an atmosphere of near hysteria in the Boston area throughout the early and middle 1960s. Not even a few completely uninvolved people were accused of being involved in the heist, with the media loudly proclaiming their guilt, even with no evidence or facts to support their claims. When the 5-year federal state of limitations was approaching with no real leads to solve the robbery, the Post Inspectorate and the Department of Justice stepped up a campaign of near total surveillance and harassment of all known armed robbers in the Boston area in a frantic effort to obtain clues about the robbers' identities. Just before the statute of limitations was to expire, a federal grand jury indicted 4 men and 1 woman as the perpetrators of this robbery. One of the defendants disappeared right before trial and was never found. The other defendants were acquitted at trial. To this day, the haul of $1.5 million in cash, which would be equivalent to about $12,700,000 today standards, remains undiscovered by the authorities. Vincent, Fat Vinny, Teresa, a Boston mobster who served as a lieutenant of Raymond L.S. Padrica, claimed in his book, My Life in the Mafia, that John Red Kelly was the man who planned the robbery. He allegedly received a generous 80 cents on the dollar when the money was laundered. A car doing at least 80 miles an hour sped past the main truck and then came to a sudden halt several hundred feet up the road. The local police believed that a total of 6 using several cars and machine guns were involved in the robbery. Two of the thieves were stationed on Clark Road overpass to watch for the truck. When they saw the truck, they singled down to two other crooks masquerading as highway workers near exit 3 Clark Road on Route 3. When signaled, the highway workers signaled the mail truck to slow down and pass by their fake construction site slowly, which the truck did. Then the highway crew erected a barricade across Route 3 onto Clark Road. Up ahead on the highway, two robbers dressed as cops waved the mail truck over. The case was on the top federal investigations for 5 years. Stanislaw Shekecki was placed in charge of the case. He was one of the best men Bobby Kennedy had at his disposal. A native of South Boston, Shekecki attended Boston Latin School and entered Harvard in the class of 1946. However, he was drafted into the Army and fought in combat with the Third Army in Europe. Following his discharge, he returned to Harvard and graduated with honors. He was appointed Assistant U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts in 1961 by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, who also placed him in charge of the Plymouth mail robbery investigation. 60 men of the United States Postal Inspection Service who were extremely proficient. One was assigned to the case along with dozens of FBI agents, tracked down every lead possible, but came up empty-handed every time. A $150,000 reward, about $1.2 million today, plus an additional cash reward of $50,000 from the Postmaster General was offered for any evidence. Like what I said at the beginning. I kind of repeated it, sorry. Virtually every cop and member of the underworld in Massachusetts knew who did it. It was Red Kelly and his crew. Vincent, Fat Vinny, Teresa, who we talked about earlier, the Boston mobster in the Patriarca family out of Providence, turned informant and told the authorities that John Red Kelly, also known as Red Kelly, Irish Red, and Irish Red, was a notorious Boston underworld figure who was also an associate of the Patriarca family, planned the robbery and got 80 cents on the dollar when the money was laundered by the Angulo brothers. You know, I'm half Italian. You would think I would know how to pronounce some of these names, and for whatever reason, I just don't do well with pronouncing names that I'm not familiar with. I'm doing my best. In Boston's North End, Antonio Donato, Francisca Gennaro, Michael, Nicolo, and James. The Angulos had financed the robbery. Angulos? I think it's Angulos, but maybe we're wrong. The 80% that Kelly got was an amazing deal, since the usual cut in a heist was 60 to the hood and 40 to the guy cleaning the money. Kelly, who was tight-lipped and paranoid, was most likely the most unassuming crook Boston ever produced. It has been said that he bought one pair of shoes a year. He gave his wife a $75 weekly allowance. He seldom swore, and he didn't drink. He pulled off more than dozens of heists. Heists that were large and small, hiding his cash stash behind his bathroom walls. Kelly was a suspected murderer for the mob, but he usually kept away from direct contact of the crimes he planned, and he financed Kelly and George Augusto Tellis, aka Aggie and Billy Augusto Tellis. They were most likely the two robbers in the heist. The Augusto Tellis came up with the idea of robbing the truck in the first place and brought Kelly into the deal. Aggie started his criminal career in the 1950s by robbing a bank in Quincy. He was captured while riding a stolen... Sorry, this kind of made me crack up. He was captured while riding a stolen lawnmower across a golf course as part of his getaway. I mean, you gotta try, right? I don't know. If he had not stolen the lawnmower and escaped on foot like the other participants in the robbery, he most likely would not have been caught. He tried. Maybe I give him for being creative. The cops shot him as he drove off in the mower. He was the only participant in the robbery that was caught. As the statute of limitations approached for the robbery, the desperate Justice Department flooded Massachusetts with a small army of agents to do surveillance. The desperate Justice Department flooded Massachusetts with a small army of agents to do surveillance and harass, as well as threaten almost every known dollar crook in the city, and still nothing broke. Threats were made from both sides. After the postal inspectors walked into Kelly's wife's apartment, and it's noted that they were happily married, but for safety reasons, they kept separate apartments. So Kelly tracked down the inspectors and said, and I quote, "You ever bother my wife again, I'm going to come up behind you and kill you with my bare hands. Maybe I'll let your family watch," unquote. Later, after this incident, inspectors pulled over Kelly's car, and they dragged him out into the street and said, and I quote, "If I find a gun on you, I'm going to stick it up your blank," begins with an A, "as far as my elbow and pull the trigger," unquote. Well, desperate times, right? What's that saying? Oh my goodness. The postal inspectors decided that Thomas Richards was a suspect and literally ripped apart his home in a vain hunt for what they thought would turn up $11 million of the loot. When the FBI approached Elizabeth Kelly, who was Red Kelly's wife, at her home, they told her that her husband was a criminal mastermind, and she said, and this is another quote, "When they said that, I just laughed because my husband couldn't mastermind his way out of a paper bag," and I unquote. Well, that's nice to say about your husband. Okay. I mean, if she was joking, no. A week later, as Elizabeth claimed postal inspectors illegally entered and searched her apartment and assaulted her by grabbing her arm and preventing her from using the telephone. Elizabeth phoned her husband to come home and confront the inspectors. He did. She said that the inspectors taunted her by asking if she would like to collect reward money in the case for bringing in the mail crook. Red Kelly would later bring a suit against Postal Inspector Raymond J. Dunn, who was assigned to the mail robbery for invasion of privacy. He also sought an injunction against harassment by the inspector and demanded that they return $235 in cash and some canvas bags. It bear the label of the Union Market National Bank, so that's why they claimed it, from the apartment. Besides the lawsuits and injunctions, the Hoods fought back against the push by the government. They sent death threats to agents' wives and children. They would follow the agents around town, and they actually won the media over to their side and turned the tables on the government and entered a series of lawsuits against agency directors. So I guess, when you put the heat on the criminals, as they say, some will fight back, I guess. 60 days before the statute of limitations was to expire, a federal grand jury indicted Kelly, Thomas Richards, Patricia Diaferio, Aggie Augustelis of Lexington were indicted. Augustelis, who was wanted on a parole violation charge, he never appeared in court and went underground until he accidentally ran into a postal inspector at a diner. Augustelis, who planned the heist, did not make it to the actual event because he suffered a heart attack that sent him to the hospital. Tommy Richards, a member of Kelly's regular crew, was slated to testify. Most likely he was to testify against the others, but he mysteriously disappeared in 1967, and he was never to be seen again. When Kelly's lawyer said he was concerned that Richards would testify against them, Kelly replied, I quote, "Yeah, I don't think so. Tommy won't be joining us," unquote. Well, doesn't that I know it's circumstantial evidence, but doesn't that sound like guilt? I don't know. Okay. My opinion, I don't know. Bailey would later be told that I say the word in my head and I think it's going to come out the way I'm saying it in my head, and it doesn't. Patriarcha associate Maurice Lerner shot Richards in the head right after Richards realized he was going to be killed and begged for his life, saying, I quote, "I never did anything to hurt any of you guys," unquote. And it was true. Richard had been loyal to Kelly, but Kelly did not think Richards could stand the heat of a trial or prison. So it was safer if he was dead. Robert Rasmussen, a lowlife out of Denham, Massachusetts, was severely beaten and then shot to death wearing only underwear, black socks, and a tie. Why would he be wearing a tie? I don't know if that had any meaning. I don't know, but a tie, really? Strange. Okay. He was so severely beaten that it took detectives who knew him 6 hours to figure out who he was. He had gotten out of prison 2 months prior. He was in prison for armed robbery. He was number 16 in the first 10 months of 1965 to have been killed. Henry Reddington was mostly a bookmaker and loan shark. He was shot to death with 4 bullets as he looked out the window of his real estate office. Redding was most likely killed as a part of the so-called Boston Irish Wars. It was known that he laundered at least some of the money from the heist. Frankie Benjamin played some role in the heist, was taken to a beach. He was taken to a beach and shot dead by Jimmy the Bear. Jimmy the Bear received life for the murder. Leo Lowry, a professional B&E artist who spent most of his adult life in prison, was shot through the head twice and had his throat slit. George Ashe, another hanger-on, was murdered in the South End of Boston. With all these murders happening left and right, Augustelis backed off his demands from a cut from Kelly, from part of the cut from Kelly. Kelly had murdered so many people associated with the robbery that the Boston Mafia bosses, the Angelos and Gulos, put out the word to their people that should they come across Kelly, they were not to mention the robbery to him. The problem was that Kelly roamed the north end of the city, spouting off that he had pulled off the mail heist. And Kelly would stop every now and then to see if the listener wanted to do anything. Like, yeah, I heard about that part. Postal, kind of like, you know, what are you going to say? Are you going to say anything? Postal inspectors and the FBI were certain Kelly, who loved cats and often carried his house cat around with him, was behind the robbery. And he placed intense scrutiny and so the FBI placed intense scrutiny and pressure on him. But Kelly was a tough cookie and never broke. He said, and I quote, "Postal inspectors harassed my wife and frightened my Siamese cats. The feds, unquote. The feds decided to arrest him anyway for planning the robbery, centered on a Boston knockaround guy named Joseph C. Tripoli. Tripoli was a 41-year-old tavern owner and ex-convict who most likely played some role in the heist, but it is uncertain how he was involved. He was an early suspect of the postal inspectors who kept him under constant surveillance for years. According to F. Lee Bailey, the surveillance and strong-arm tactics used by the inspectors on Tripoli, if these allegedly, right? So if these tactics happened at all, came after Tripoli turned down an offer of $250,000 for information and/or testimony relating to alleged robbers. According to Tripoli, he was promised immunity from persecution. Tripoli sued a newspaper that ran a story and photographs referring to him as one of the chief suspects in the Plymouth mail robbery. The case was dismissed by the state Supreme Court. The decision became important because it set case law that found the Tripoli's own activities in holding press conferences, including radio and television interviews in which he identified himself with other alleged suspects in that robbery. The court said Tripoli, by his conduct, made himself a public figure in a matter of public interest. Russell C. Nicholson was shot twice in the back of the head. His body was found in the woods. A former patrolman, he had no criminal record, but he was known to have been friendly with almost every mobster in the Boston area. Nicholson was forced out of the police department when he became a suspect in the Plymouth mail robbery. Frances Kissel, an assistant U.S. attorney, happened to be driving from Boston to her weekend cottage in Wareham. When about 9:25 a.m., she came across Red Kelly standing in front of the mail truck. She appeared in court as a witness for the prosecution, but Kelly's attorney, the F. Lee Bailey, meticulously took apart her testimony. Kissel explained that she had given such a sloppy testimony because she kept reading newspaper accounts of the mobsters related to the case who kept turning up dead. Another witness, William Fitzgerald, a civil service investigator, saw Kelly driving the mail truck down Route 3, but the only problem was he did not come forward for 2 years. This in turn hurt his testimony. In the end, Kelly was acquitted. The probe by the federal agents and the trial has cost more than 4 times the amount of the loot taken in the robbery. So the other defendants were acquitted at trial as well. And the Plymouth mail truck is still, to this day, officially an unsolved mystery. As well as the $1.5 million in cash remains undiscovered by authorities. So this mystery, unsolved mystery, is officially an unsolved mystery, but it sounds to me like there is a lot of evidence, although it's not concrete fact, it's more circumstantial, that this was a mob related incident, allegedly, of course, can't be proven. And so for me, it's very, it was a very interesting to research. There isn't a lot of information out there on this heist, believe it or not. And what I did find, it all points back to Kelly. And so I really enjoyed, it almost was, this was a true crime, true crime robbery. But it almost seemed like when I was reading it, the cast of characters, it seemed like it could be a movie, which I don't know. Did they make a movie of this? Maybe they did. I have no idea. If they didn't, they should. It just was very, very interesting. And so you think about these robberies, and I mean, mystique about, or mystery, or I don't even know what the word is, but people are very, some people are very intrigued by the mob and what they represent. And, both sides of the coin, right? I mean, these are people that are committing crime, right? Allegedly. Some of them are cutthroat, really. And the loyalty. I mean, if you go against a mafia family, I mean, your days back then, I assume, were numbered. I don't know how the individuals that were involved in the mob, whether it was the Irish, the Italians, so forth, Russian, how they could live every day as if it's their last, knowing that they could say one wrong thing and that'll get them basically killed. I don't know how much the mystique and the intrigue is on it. I watched the Godfather movies. they were in very they kept my attention, and I enjoyed it for a movie. What it was, it was a movie, but Marlon Brando and all that, Pacino. But when you really get to the heart of that movie and the way, this is just my opinion only, people can totally disagree, but the way that women were treated in that movie, they were treated horribly in that movie. They were treated, in my opinion, like they were second-rate citizens, and they didn't have a voice. You married into it, and this is the way it was going to be, and that was that, or born into it, So anyway, that's kind of off topic, isn't it? This was a very interesting unsolved mystery to research, because it's unsolved officially, but people are pretty certain they know what actually happened. But the thing is, where's the money? See, and I think that's another thing with the money. When I read these robberies and they don't know where the money went, it's very strategic, because how do you trace the money if it was all separated into different places that it was put? That alone, so it would be hard to trace, I guess, is what I'm saying. Below, let me know what you thought of this mystery, if you think it is a unsolved mystery, or if you think it really has been solved. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me out. If you are not subscribed to my channel, I ask you to consider subscribing. If you already are subscribed to my channel, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your love and your support. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.